Look out, SARS, move over MERS, Ebola, please. And Zika had better watch her back because here comes Corona-chan. That's right, call it the Wuhan virus, the Kung Flu, or COVID-19. It doesn't matter because the new virus on the block is breaking all the records and we won't stop until we're number one. Greetings and salvations, I am Unthoth Neverborn, The-Abyss-That-Slumbers, and you are listening to the Eldritch God. I have been putting off this video in hopes of some good news, and I don't know if I have any. Well, I'm here to give you the unofficial lowdown on the virus. Don't take anything I tell you at face value. Things are changing so fast that everything in this video could be out of date by the time I upload it. Not to mention the fact it's kind of hard to get information on this. So, I'm going to consider this rumors and theories. That all said, I want to make something perfectly clear to you people. Something I don't like talking about. I'm technically a genius. Yes, that's right, IQ of 148. Also a moron, but I'm smart enough to know how stupid I am. I got a really good gift. My gift is to know the answer to things. How did I come up with the answer? I got no clue. It's always been my problem. You know, you give me a problem, I'll tell you the solution. How did you do this? I got no idea. I just know what the answer is. Give me enough data, shove enough information in my head, and I'll spit out an answer to your question for you. Then if you tell me, how did you come to this conclusion? I'll get no clue. And unfortunately, in this world, people want to know how you come up with your answer. It's amazing how often I come up with the right answer, tell it to somebody, and then it's months later that they go, wow, Bob, you were right. How'd you know that? I don't know. And this virus has been scaring the crap out of me because I do not like the answers I've been coming up with. It's kind of why I've been putting off this video. Haven't really wanted to do it. But first of all, I'd like to create a theoretical virus. Let's consider this the worst pandemic virus of all time. We will take the stats of all major pandemics, and I'm only talking pandemics here, not localized viral outbreaks, so don't get your panties in a bunch when I don't use MERS or SARS. And I'm going to combine all the worst aspects. What would that virus look like? And yes, I'll be including Spanish flu. It'd have a R0 rate of about 1.8. Mortality would be about 2%, which drops to about 0.4% when you get treatment in a hospital. Incubation period until contagious, about 6 days. Affects mostly the young and old. You show symptoms about the same time you're infectious, and your body shrugs it off at about 1 to 2 weeks. Let's look at the stats for our Corona-chan, shall we? Our R0 rate of 2.6 up to 3.8. Some high levels around 11 if you talk to some people. Mortality of 17%, dropping to 2% if you get to a hospital. That's highly suspect, but I'm putting it out there. I think it's probably around 5% average, but who knows? The figures are all over the goddamn place. Incubation period until contagious, as soon as 12 hours. Apparently, for days, even weeks after the symptoms subside, you're still contagious. Time to manifesting symptoms, up as early as 24 hours. There's been at least one recorded case that I saw where somebody was dead in 24 hours from contact, but might have been an outlier, might have been something else that killed them, not just the virus, probably. However, it's also been shown that it can take up to 24 days before you show symptoms. Typical, it's about 3 days to symptoms, with the average being 6.4. 99% of all cases are manifesting by day 14. It affects everyone. Anyone can get this thing. However, the death age on average seems to be about age 49. That means, yes, you can die at 20, but you're more likely to die if you're 50-50 over 49, you know? There are people who have contracted this disease and still have not gotten over it. However, it seems to be from the date of first contact, it takes you about a month to fully get this out of your system. Oh, important little side fact here. Just found that out while I was doing final research before the video. Add this into my notes here. Did you know that 10% of the total population of humanity is currently in quarantine? Yeah, that little number seems to get ignored by mainstream media right now. But hey, it's just a coof. It's just a coof, bro. It's just a coof. This thing has been going since January 1st, if you believe the Chinese, with rumors of it going as early back as October. But let's go with the Chinese numbers because we know we're lowballing there, but hey, I'd rather lowball than estimate too high. As of this posting, it's over 1,700 dead. I put out a video that I put only to my friends. It's unlisted. This one will not be. This one will be public. But in my unlisted video, I projected that by today, there'd be 280 dead. Holy shit, was I lowballing that one. By the way, to put it in perspective, last year the flu killed 80,000 people worldwide. If this continues on its current path, assuming that it's stabilized and it lasts till the end of the year, which it looks like it will, we're talking about 90,000 dead. And that's the most optimistic projection I can make. Unless we just happen to have completely contained it, which I severely doubt, and I'll get into why later, there's going to be a huge death toll on this. And I would like to point out that I thought it'd be at 280 today. I was off by about a factor of 7. So, wow. We have 70,000 infected, officially. 11,000 in critical condition, officially. We have about 500-600 infected outside of China. And I'll get into that later there. But oddly enough, the critical rate and death toll outside of China is really low. We'll talk about that later. But this virus, if it's going to go for the number 2 spot, beat out every other virus, right now it's beat out Ebola in infections and Zika in kills. But if this gets up to, I believe, 1.5 million infected and kills 15,000 people, this virus will hold the number 2 spot as the most infectious and most deadly virus that has gone pandemic in the world for all of recorded history. After that, Corona-chan is up against the number 1 viral pandemic of all time, Spanish flu. The estimates on that vary. But let's go with the worst estimates to make sure the Corona-chan buries that number 1 spot. She'll need to infect 2.5 billion people and kill 100 million to get the coveted number 1 spot as most deadly virus ever. SARS, MERS, Ebola, Zika, those guys got rookie numbers. Corona-chan is going number 1 with a bullet. Me help us all. Now, before I go any further, I'm going to insert a clip here. All right, here we have a typical diagram of how the virus progresses. I'm going to explain the specifics here, then I'm going to show you how this is for the Wuhan flu. Right here, following the cursor, we have the initial point of infection. This green line represents the amount of viruses in your body over time. It goes up to peak infection, right up here, and then it starts to taper off to about here. When you get infected, there's an initial point period where your body is trying to figure out how to kill the virus. So there's this little gap here before it starts making antibodies. When it makes antibodies, it starts to make them, and then it keeps making them until it reaches a peak period and plateaus off. And then eventually it'll drop off, and you will remain what is called memory cells. These are cells that remember what this virus is, and the next time it sees it, it will just go, oh, it's that sucker again, and then just start pumping out antibodies to get rid of it. This is how vaccines work. They basically give you a safe version of the virus. Your body figures out how to create antibodies, and then it moves on. How do the antibodies work? Well, basically, think of the virus as a key, and that key can unlock your cells and take them over, like a burglar breaking into your house. Your antibodies are locks. They're fake locks. And they latch onto the virus and either overwhelm its receptors so it doesn't have any room to put its keys in anything else, or in some cases it convinces the virus you've found a house, and the virus unlocks itself in your open bloodstream, which basically kills it. So that's how the antibodies work. So your body will pump them out until it overwhelms. This pink line here is your symptoms. So you can see you can get infected, but there's usually a lag period before you actually have the symptoms. And then the symptoms peak up, and then they taper off as the virus goes down. Why is this? Why doesn't your body immediately start doing symptoms? Because your symptoms are to protect your body. Your fever makes your immune system work better. It also inhibits viruses that require a specific temperature to work at. It slows down the reproduction of your other cells, so even if it hijacks the cell, it makes more viruses slower. And eventually you get enough antibodies to start overwhelming the amount of viruses that you're pumping out. The virus is just got to keep pumping out viruses until you're dead. The antibodies start killing viruses faster than they can reproduce, and that's when it drops off. This symptom threshold is because your body is being constantly assaulted by viruses, constantly, every day. You got bacteria, viruses, but your body goes, we know what that is. We're not worried about it. If your body had full-blown symptoms for every time you had any virus in your system, you'd be dead. So we have a certain tolerance for a certain amount of a virus. When the tolerance is high, you get infectious, you can pass the virus on before your body is showing symptoms. If your body has a really low threshold, like with SARS, you get symptoms before you can pass the virus on because your body goes, whoa, what the hell is that? We're going to take care of this immediately. We are going to take this very, very seriously. And we're back. Let's talk about the virus. It's man-made. A lot of people will go, oh, you don't know that for certain, but I know it. It doesn't appear to be weaponized. Now, how do I know it's man-made? Well, not many viruses have patented proteins in the wild. Something not a lot of people are talking about, and you can go see the code sequence yourself. It's got a 99% match with the P shuttle protein as patented by Adgene Corporation. So that little protein there is used to take two sections of RNA and stick them together. So kind of funny we found that in there. On one side of the P shuttle, we have 96% match to the bat coronavirus. And on the other side, we've got the OCF10 protein, more commonly found in herpes. No, this is not lung herpes. We only have one protein from herpes. We know quite a bit about OCF10, and it's in other viruses as well, but herpes is the most likely candidate. Now, why? Well, why would you stick that protein on this thing? Well, it's pretty well understood. We know a lot about the herpes virus. We have vaccines against it. We know what it does. So if I was trying to figure out coronavirus, how would I do it? Well, I'd take a protein I knew about and I'd stick it on the coronavirus and see what it does. It's entirely possible that somebody was just trying to figure out how to cure coronavirus, and then this little experiment got loose. People are going to go and claim it's a conspiracy, it's about eliminating excess population, blah, 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 blah. Unless you have proof of a conspiracy, chances are it's bogus. Go with Occam razor here, okay? The most likely answer is probably the right one. It isn't weaponized. People don't even know what weaponizing a virus does. If this thing was supposed to be weaponized, they did a shitty job. No, it is far more likely this is an experiment that got loose, especially because the progression of the disease was from one central point. If I was going to do this as an attack, if I was going to wipe out everybody over the age of 50 in my nation because I wanted to cut down on pensions, as somebody suggested, I would have hit multiple cities at once. But why, you may ask? Didn't China do something sooner? Isn't that proof? Well, you're assuming that government is effective. Every government has bureaucracy, and the more bureaucracy, the slower something goes. The last time China had a major virus, it took 82 days for them to even acknowledge it existed. So them being incredibly slow about this is completely understandable. You see, If I was the guy in charge of making decisions on how to treat this, I would have said, oh, well, it's a coronavirus. I'm not going to worry about it. It was a calculated gamble. 99 times out of 100, this virus would have burned through the local population, maybe killed a couple hundred people. That's a food riot. Come on. Except, well, somebody should have explained this guy the science. Because unfortunately, OCF10 protein inhibits mutation. Unlike most coronaviruses that would snuff themselves out with an asymptomatic variant, this sucker is stable as hell. It is also super sneaky. Let's go over the particulars of why this is an amazing virus. This virus, when it infects a cell, creates RNA inside, and the RNA pops out. It doesn't explode like a normal virus and have multiple copies running around. No. The RNA pushes through the membrane, and it takes a chunk of the membrane with it as a covering. Think of it as cloaking yourself in lamb's skin when you're a wolf. The virus buds off of the cell it infects, and as it buds, the little chunk of membrane tells the body that it's that cell. So if it infected your lung virus, a little chunk of lung virus of your lung cell is drifting around. And that makes it harder for your immune system to detect it. The spikes on the virus that it then grows are used to attach to the ACE2 receptors. This little glyco spike, it's retractable. It pops up, looks around, and if it doesn't find anything, it goes burp, burp. Makes it kind of hard for the antibodies to latch on when it's retracted, which means the only time antibodies can actually hook onto this thing is when it's checking around for ACE2 receptors. Fascinating that. It means you need probably 10 times the normal amount of antibodies to get one virus than you normally would. Oh, by the way, did I mention the OCF10 protein also inhibits the production of antibodies? Just thought you might want to know that. Yeah. I needed to point all this part out before I explain this next little clip I'm going to stick in. Now here we see the projection for the Wuhan virus. Do note this is very sketchy. Take it with a grain of salt, but this is off of initial preliminary data. I have had to adjust it. That's why it looks weirdly edited. Yeah, my handwriting sucks. At any rate, you have the initial infection point here. Then you get virus. A lot of viruses before you even start to see a hint of symptom. Okay? And it does seem to take quite a bit of time before your body starts making antibodies. Because of this, you are infectious long before you show symptoms. Okay? This time period here, the dromal period, I suspect you get initially infected, probably are infectious by about 12 hours, maybe 24. And then there's a good day or two or three, depending on your type of person and their immune system, where before you even start to show any symptoms. But when you do show symptoms, those symptoms go way up. I mean, this has an incredible strike range. It can go from you don't even notice, okay? If your immune system is good enough, the antibodies kick in, you might never reach this symptom threshold of the virus. It might go up and then start to taper off and disappear before you even see symptoms. But for the typical person, you start to make the antibodies, they make it up into here, you reach the peak virus. But unlike that unusual drop-off on the previous one, the virus, your symptoms disappear very quickly. But you still have the virus load. And it continues in your system for quite a while. So you are infectious after you no longer have symptoms for however long this time period, however long this is. However long this period is here, that you are still infectious. And then it drops off. And the antibodies follow the normal projection. This is highly unusual. And we're back. I hope that everything I just explained before the clip makes you understand the clip now. That is why this thing is so infectious. Your body doesn't even recognize you have a viral load. And when you finally get the viral load, your body overreacts. And then when the viral load goes down, your body thinks everything's fine when it's not. And so that's why you have that long period of infection afterward as well. The stealthy nature of this virus is the problem. Combine all that with the fact that this thing is infectious as soon as 24 hours after exposure, and it might take up to 24 days before you even show symptoms. Although, to be honest, you're 99% likely to show up by day 14, 95% by day 12.5. This thing is going to be impossible to contain. It's already past containment. Hell, I probably already have it. Now, that all said, we need to address the elephant in the room. You might have heard something called the R-naught. This is the rate of transmission. It might be 2.2 or 4.1 or 16 or whatever. Unfortunately, at this point, the number really doesn't matter. There's an old math puzzle. It's into a pond, you place a single lily pad. The number of lily pads double every day. It takes 30 days before the pond is 100% covered. On what day is the lily pad only half covered? Answer? Day 29. Yeah, a lot of people go, wait, doesn't it day 15? No. It's doubling every day. That means about the time that you actually notice, that, by the way, the original lily pad would have to be microscopic. So, by the time that you notice that there's a problem, you're days away from this getting out of control. The difference between R02 and R04 is a single reproduction cycle, which seems to be about 6.4 days. So if the R0 is 2, 4, 8, or 16, we're only talking about a difference about whether or not it's going to take 90 days for maximum saturation to 83 days to 76 days or 69 days. The difference between R2 and R16 is 21 days. The R0 score really only matters when the virus is localized and it can still be contained. At this point, given how stealthy this thing is, it's going to spread. How quickly it reaches maximum saturation across the entire planet is plus or minus a few weeks. It's going to reach maximum saturation sooner rather than later, but it's only a matter of time. We're probably looking at somewhere between 90 to 76 days before it hits half the population on the planet. However, all isn't gloom and doom. Right now, given how many cases are outside of China and given the fatality rate inside of China, we should have somewhere between a minimum of 12 and up to 80 people dead outside of China. We currently only have 3 dead. 2 of those were people who left China, so I kind of don't count them. Whereas we have 11,000 in critical condition in China, outside we only have 6 in critical condition. The death toll should be much higher. The critical condition rate should be much higher, but it's not. So, what gives? Well, there are a number of possibilities. The worst one is the virus simply takes a long time to kill people. Possible, but unlikely. If the virus is going to kill, it most likely reaches a tipping point in the victim, and then their health drops off a cliff. This isn't common for viruses to linger a long time then kill, but there are some recorded cases. I doubt that's the one. The second option is that there is some sort of other factor we don't know about. Everyone is talking about the conditions in China. There may be something that is local to China that makes this virus more deadly for people in China than anywhere else. Now, one might jump on the genetic angle, except that humans are remarkably homogeneous. True, Asian people have a slight uptick in the ACE2 receptors than other races. However, just so you know, we all have ACE2 receptors. Okay, we're only talking about a 5% difference, not 5 times difference as some people have been going around and saying. It's only 5%. And maybe this increased number of ACE2 receptors is what allows it to latch onto other organs which have the receptor, like the heart, liver, and kidney, because that does seem to be where these people are dying. The actual lung disease, when it attacks the lungs, actually seems to be treatable. It's when it gets into the kidneys or the heart failure, shuts down the kidneys, or, you have a heart attack and die. That seems to be what seems to be killing a lot of people. So, the actual lung seems to be survivable, but when it gets to your other organs, that's where it gets dangerous. Oh, by the way, I just saw one report. Take it as a rumor. Seems to attack the testicles. That's right. It's possible this thing has a side effect. If you survive, you'll be sterile. Oh my God, this thing is beautiful. It is a beautiful virus. It is perfect. Whoever made this thing, my God. You did a great job. I hope it was an experiment, because this was literally a weaponized virus to get down the human population. Fuck you. Just fuck you. Okay? Just go screw yourself, you asshole. I'm hoping it was an experiment. I know it's man-made, but whoever did it, great job. I don't think you know what you made. There are other factors that are much more likely than genetics, however. So let's look at the demographics a bit more closely. First of all, the virus affects the old far more than the young. It affects men more than women. And it affects native Chinese more than immigrants. Doesn't seem to matter where those immigrants come from. They could be Chinese returning to China. Unfortunately, we've got a very small sample size for that, as far as the records are concerned. But it does seem to be that people who weren't living in China aren't as affected, but that's a very small group. We're talking 9 cases, so take it with a grain of salt. I do think that this indicates 2 possible secondary factors. Now, men in China smoke a lot. I've seen quotes of 16% of all men in China smoke, up to 50%. Women do not smoke. I've seen it be stated that only about 3% of women in China smoke. Okay. And by the way, that's a regular basis. I'm not sure about the stats. Again, it's all over the place. But I think this is the reason why the virus affects men more than women in a ratio of 6-4, because smoking just destroys the lining that's protecting your cells in your lungs, making this virus so much easier to just, get right in there. Second, the air quality in China is terrible. And I mean, it's awful. The pollutants in the air would wear down the immune system of anyone breathing it. It will take time to do that, but it's a relentless poisoning of the air. The air quality in China is infamously bad. So, what would this mean? Well, it would mean that you would think that young immune systems that haven't been exposed to air pollutants for as long as, somebody who's 50 would deal with this virus better. This is reflected in the low mortality rate of victims under 15, which is nearly non-existent. Also, something to keep in consideration. This virus is very stealthy, so people's immune systems don't take on secondary characteristics very quickly. Your immune system is looking for, an antibody the whole time. The primary immune system is working, but secondary immune system, where you get the fever and you start coughing a lot, those symptoms don't come up for quite a while. Children, on the other hand, have a tendency with very young immune systems to overreact to viruses. It's why that you get the cytokine storms in children with other flu viruses. But because this thing is so stealthy, maybe it's possible that children which overreact to most viruses, are reacting just the right amount for this virus. That's a possibility too. I don't have any proof on this, but it's a theory, something that could be tested. It also doesn't affect immigrants as much, but that is more anecdotal, as I stated. So I think it's worth mentioning, which indicates to me that I think that it's pollution that's the problem. You have people breathing the equivalent of iron filings for decades, where your air quality is best described as speckled. And, well, I'm sorry, a virus like this is just going to run rampant and just annihilate people. It just is. This theory reflects the data I have so far, which would also indicate that the new arrivals in China, young people and people who have lived in rural China, far away from poisonous fumes pumped up by Chinese factories, would have a far greater chance of surviving this. Now, unfortunately, there's no way to really figure that out, except I would like to point out that Mongolia and Tibet are not heavily industrialized. Without a lot of industry in those areas, you don't have a lot of chemicals being pumped out into the atmosphere. And when you look at the map of where these infections are, there are very few in Tibet and Mongolia. Now, it might be simply because it just hasn't gotten out there yet. But I think that's a good indicator. I think we need to keep an eye on that. Maybe in a month or two, if this pattern keeps up, we'll have some sort of confirmation. Who knows? That's the thing about theories. You can get theories to fit any amount of facts. It's projecting and predicting that's the problem. We used to have a pretty good test case for this. I'm sure you've heard about the plague ship right off the coast of Japan. This cruise liner, at the release of this video, had 355 confirmed cases on board and another 3,000 people who could get infected. Right now, most are only reporting mild symptoms. There has been nobody in critical conditions. And a great deal of those passengers are older. Quite a few are past retirement age. Needless to say, recovering from this disease while quarantined at sea isn't the ideal condition, but for the rest of the world, this would be a good thing. You see, if in the next 3 weeks nobody dies on that ship, that indicates this is a whole lot less deadly. Remember, the tickets to that cruise ship aren't cheap. You have to have a great deal of money to get on that ship. Rich people keep better care of themselves. I seriously doubt that anybody on that ship is a former coal miner with black lung. So, what can we determine from this? Well, basically, if they die from the virus, we can be certain that the reason why is only because of the virus. There might be complications from other illnesses, but if there's only a scattering of deaths, say 3, 4, somewhere around there, then this is the same fatality rate of normal flu, really. If it's around 30, then that's about 1%. That's bad, but not terrible. If we eventually get 150 deaths, that would put this at the 5% death rate. Then the truth is, we're all kind of screwed. However, I'm doubting that will be the case. Nobody on that ship is in critical condition, and we know this thing can drop you inside of 24 hours from exposure. Admittedly, that was an extreme case, but everybody on that ship has been exposed. So if nobody has dropped dead already, then every day nobody's dead. That's a good chance this isn't as bad as we thought. Every day that ship doesn't turn into a floating tomb is one more day towards our goal of showing that maybe we're not totally boned. It's still bad, mind you. It's just not Mad Max Beyond the Thunderdome bad. Now, I want to move on to the rate of mutation at this point. As I said, OCF10 inhibits mutation. There are influenza coronaviruses that have a successful rate of recreating themselves copy-free as low as 80%. That's not all flu. Some are better than others, but I wanted to go with the worst-case scenario. But it's that low copy rate, and 80% is a low copy rate. It's because it's an RNA. It doesn't have that second strand of DNA to make sure there are no errors. This is why the flu is so hard to create a vaccine for. The flu is constantly mutating and inadvertently strangles off its own prey by creating a version of itself that immunizes the host without causing any bad symptoms. The flu isn't harmless, but it's extremely self-limiting because of its own mutation error. A lot of mutations is far more likely to make a mutation that's bad for the virus and good for us than to make a super flu that's going to kill everybody. It's impossible to eradicate, but it's not overtly dangerous, except for the 0.1% of people it kills every year. The COVID-19 virus has an error-free copy rate of 99.98%. That is about 1,000 times more stable than the most unstable flu. Now, this is good and bad. On the upside, it will be much less likely to mutate. Thus, if we get a vaccine, it will more than likely be effective for a long time to come. We should have plenty of time to deploy the vaccine worldwide and end this scourge. On the downside, because there's no chance this virus is going to strangle itself off with an asymptomatic mutation, this thing is going to spread. So whereas the flu mutates into a new strain once or twice a year, this thing should take theoretically 1,000 years to mutate into a new strain. Except that is per replication. The more people infected, the more replications, and the more chances for a mutation of any kind. If we get 1,000 times more people exposed to this virus than the average flu outbreak, then it will mutate just as much as the flu. And let me assure you, this thing does have the legs to infect billions. Also remember, mutations are on a bell curve. There is a range of possibilities. We could already have a second deadly strain. Or we might not see a significant variation in this strain for centuries. Yes, there's always going to be some copy errors, but usually the copy errors don't reproduce. So, let's recap at this point. It's very stable and unlikely to become a recurring annual disease like the flu. But the stability, combined with its stealthy nature, makes it easier for it to spread. The virus might not be as deadly as we think, but it might develop a new, more deadly strain as it infects large populations. Unlike the flu, which needs only a couple of million, this needs about 1 billion, and it might get 1 billion. So what does this mean for humanity? Well, at this point, governments are not going to stop it. What they can do is slow down the virus, but that is about it at this point. And this is where you come in. That's why I'm putting out this virus and making it, this video this time, and I'm making it public. I'm not just sharing this with my friends. Simply put, it is up to each of us to do our part. If everyone adopts habits that will slow down the spread of this disease, even if they never come up with a vaccine, it is likely to snuff itself out by simply getting everyone sick and then dying out as it runs out of new potential carriers. By the way, I've seen some idiots state that you should intentionally catch this now so you can get to the hospital while there's still room. I cannot stress this enough. Do not intentionally get yourself sick. That's a really bad idea and will make things worse. We need to slow things down. The slower it goes, the slower critical care patients will pop up and the slower they will trickle into the hospital. We are less likely to be overwhelmed with a tsunami of illness, and thus the medical infrastructure will be maintained. This is going to require a decentralized response with everybody working together as a team. I think China is proving that the centralized response is just not working. Embrace the Dunbar empathy limit. Find a small group of people who like you and that you like in return. Build those social connections with your friends, family, and neighbors. Eventually somebody's going to get this, and when they do, they will survive. The first one to recover needs to help those who come later. Pool your resources. Stock up on extra food. Take those soda bottles that you were going to recycle, fill them with tap water, and put them in the basement. With any luck, in 6 months, you can pour them all out because it was a waste of time. I hope it's a waste of time. Wash your hands every chance you get. I cannot stress that enough. Don't rub your eyes, don't pick your nose, don't lick your thumb when you're paging through magazines in the doctor's office. Hell, don't touch anything out in public if you don't have to. Press the button on the elevator with your elbow. Need to use a public toilet? Most public restrooms have soap or hand sanitizer. Put some on a tissue and wipe the seat before you sit. I don't care if you get a soapy butt. Flush with your foot, and if there's available seat, put the lid down. You might think of wearing a mask and goggles in public, but at this point it's not shown to be that helpful. The masks that people can get are only useful for about an hour. As you breathe, moisture will build up and that'll just let the virus just go right through. It might slow down catching the disease, but you need to throw them out on a regular basis. And we just don't have enough masks. Truth is, the masks are all but useless. Rubber gloves would be much more useful than masks at this point. Oh, by the way, don't bother with hand sanitizer. Yeah, that stuff is good on bacteria, and it'll help stop any secondary infection. But it actually traps the virus on your hands. I'm afraid you're going to actually wash your hands with soap and water to get rid of it. And by the way, you're not killing it with the soap, you're just washing it away with the soap. You can't use just water, as the oils in your skin will repel the water and it'll keep the virus trapped on your hands. You aren't killing the virus, you're removing it. It can't get through intact skin, but it can get through wounds and mucous membranes. So not only is hand washing a must, but use a bandage if you have an open cut, or even a healing cut for that matter. For those of you who have the option, have only one way into your home, preferably the garage. Keep a bucket of Lysol and water by the door inside. Lysol has been shown to kill the virus. You don't need a lot of Lysol in the bucket, but, a couple capfuls. And when you go in or out, soak your arms up to your elbows for 20 seconds in the bucket. Then when you get inside, wash them. Nothing enters the house that isn't sprayed down and wiped on the outside. If you're going out, do it all at once. If you go home, stay home as long as you can. As soon as you get home, strip. And if you have a washing machine in your home, put the laundry in the machine directly. If you can afford it, do your laundry as often as possible. And a small capful of bleach can't hurt. Well, it might ruin your clothes, but hey, you can always get more clothes. Don't have enough laundry to make a full load of laundry? Well, hey, change your bed sheets. Can't hurt, might help. Don't eat food prepared by anybody else. Do your grocery shopping early in the morning before 11 a.m. Back when nobody's out there, a lot of grocery stores are open 24/7. 3 a.m. would be ideal. Big Lots, Ollie's, buyout stores of all sorts have cheap food that have a shelf life in the decades. The food might not taste good, but it's cheap. Pick up a few dozen bags / boxes of crackers, rice, or whatever cheap non-perishables they have. I just found 12 boxes of crackers for 38 cents each. And big, huge family-sized box of Ritzes. So, I got enough crackers to last me a month. You don't need to buy a year's worth of food. You don't need to buy a full hazmat suit. It's probably a waste of money, because your goal here at this point is to slow down the projection of the disease, not to avoid it entirely. You're going to get it. But your goal is to keep from getting it for as long as possible, so that other people who get it before you will have time to recover before you need to be laid up. And hey, remember, you can get by in as little as 600 calories a day per person, as long as you have as much water as you can stand. I don't recommend it, but hey, just remember, 600 calories seems to be about that low level of substandard living. You can get by on it. So, wipe down your doorknobs and light switches in your home every night with a little Lysol. Yes, it's a pain in the ass, but wipe them down all the same. This includes the fridge. And this is the most important part. If you do get sick and you start showing any symptoms, contact your doctor. You see, I am of the honest opinion it's already in America. I work for New York State and everybody is on lockdown. We have over 30 facilities in my particular department alone that have declared a flu emergency. And the weird thing is, we don't have many reported cases of flu in the area. For having, well over a couple million people here, we only have about 800 cases. Funny that. Strong Memorial Hospital in Rochester is on flu lockdown. I know the hospitals around Syracuse are basing for impact. I also know we have a large number of call-ins lately. People are calling in sick a lot. And, well, oddly enough, I was working with some Chinese med students fresh off the plane who came back from visiting their home for Chinese New Year. And they were partying it up here in the building. And one of them vomited in the elevator. Yeah. And for those of you going, contact the CDC. I did, and they told me, well, your symptoms aren't that bad. Just monitor it and let us know. That's what's making me think that they know it's here, and they don't think it's as deadly as they think it is, as we all think it is, but what's the point of panicking, everybody, I don't know. I don't know what's going on. I just think it's a little suspicious. But here's something to note. I work with an extremely vulnerable population, people with compromised immune systems, bedridden, the elderly. If this disease was going to start killing people, it's my clients who are going to start dropping first. And I've been working with them, and you know what? There's been no deaths as of late. Given the type of clients I work with, I'd expect that Wuhan flu, if it was running through the area, that the bodies would be piling up. We haven't had anybody die in months. So either it isn't in the area, or if it is, it just isn't as deadly as we all think it is. I'm hoping it's the latter. Because of this, there's a good chance you're going to get it, and soon. We all need to do our part, and that includes calling our doctors and telling them if we think we're sick, and to go in and get checked. Yes, we might get quarantined. Think of it this way. If you don't, and you pass this on to somebody else and they die, would you live with yourself? Now, I called my doctor and I got blown off. Chances are you will too right now. However, I assure you, if you call in and get blown off, you'll feel better for it later. It's better to overreact than underreact at this point. So, to review, keep warm, keep hydrated, eat if you're hungry. If you're not hungry, don't force it. There's no specific coronavirus antiviral drugs. They're trying all sorts of stuff, but the studies aren't in. Anti-inflammatories should help. Meloxicam's a good choice, but that needs a prescription. Most people are going to be stuck with ibuprofen. And if you do wind up in the hospital and you're having a real hard time breathing and they're giving you oxygen, discuss hemoglobin-boosting drugs if it's affecting your kidneys. When your kidneys shut down, you stop making EPO. No EPO, no red blood cells. And you have less oxygen reaching your brain. And that's the name of the game. Right now, the only treatment we have is making sure oxygen keeps getting to your brain. There might be blood clotting issues, so trust their judgment. Don't just go shooting up with those drugs if you happen to have access to them. And if you're wondering who would have access to those kinds of drugs, certain exercise freaks. It's illegal to use those drugs and compete in professional sports, by the way. Moving on. I'd like to get into the psychology of the situation. Chances are the virus itself will not harm you. You might not catch it, or if you do, you are likely to shrug it off. That said, there are things to think about. Isolation. Let's say you get caught up in a quarantine. People are social creatures. Isolation does not work well for most of us. People get cabin fever. If this is you and you are forced to stay home, you will have plenty of time to worry about everything you can't control. Here's a few tips. Get a routine. Try to fill your day with things you can do and stick to it. Guess what? You can't clean your home enough. If you're stuck at home, get cleaning. Mop those floors. Bleach those door handles. Vacuum every day. Change that bag every week. Exercise if you have the room. Count your calories and think about how much weight you can lose if you only dieted properly. There are many daily activities you can perform if you put your mind to it and allocate time for each activity. If you are lucky to get stuck with someone else, chances are you will eventually get on each other's nerves. Make a point to sit down and talk to them once a day at the same time, just to clear the air. Try to be civil and remember the other person is stressed as well. Maybe you are like me and you are strongest when people put their weight upon you. You might feel better helping your roommate cope with their situation. It feels great to be the strong one others depend on, and it gives you a purpose. The other thing you can do is relax. I think I pointed out this virus is unlikely to be as dangerous as everybody says. So the big danger is actually going to be panic. Find a way to relax. Video games are a good choice. May I recommend The Long Dark? It is a game where you are the lone survivor after the silent apocalypse. Yes, I know, odd choice. But it's a very relaxing game where you wander a winter landscape trying to survive. You feel like you're outdoors. There's a lot of big open areas, as opposed to being cooped up inside. It's basically like playing a hidden object game while wandering a series of watercolor landscape paintings that periodically tries to kill you with wolves. But trust me, it's an immersive game. The soundtrack is basically non-stop white noise, and I can assure you, you will lose days playing this game. Plus, it creates the illusion that you are getting outside, which will do wonders for the psychology of your well-being. Another psychological issue is gallows humor. People have been making a lot of jokes about this. You might be offended by that. Don't be. Humor is a great way to protect your sanity. The truth is, there isn't much anyone can do to help the people in China, much less control your own fate. Accepting what you cannot change is the best way you can deal with stress. So, if people have to use humor to do that, well, People got to do what they got to do. In the end, the most harmless thing you can do is make a joke. Humor is rarely a bad thing. Try not to take it seriously. Laughter will help. And the final psychological issue isn't for specific people, it's for group psychology. I'm talking about social disintegration. If you live in an area without a great deal of social cohesion, things can fall apart under strain. This is why I stress getting to know your neighbors and keeping in contact with friends. People working together can fight this. People rioting in the street trying to get food or looting when the law breaks down can kill far more people than the virus ever will. Truth is, we have a movement here in America where you have all these people called social justice warriors. These people actively hate the establishment. In fact, I would go so far as to say as most of them hate the United States in general. People like that are cancer. They will turn on you in a heartbeat. You need to avoid people like that. You need people who believe in something, like their nation, or their religion, or any positive cause that they happen to hang their hat on. Those are people you can count on. People who have been through stressful situations rarely crumble under pressure. Those are the types of people you want around you. People who talk about how glad they are that the virus is killing people because there's too many people on the planet, well, I'd avoid those people like the plague. No pun intended. People like that cannot be depended on. It's time to think about yourself and the people you care about. If the people around you cannot pull their own weight, and in fact are dragging everyone down, it's time to tell that person to get with the program or to get gone. I'm serious about this. I see news articles blaming this virus on white oppression. Apparently, quarantining people from China is racist. Fortunately, these so-called news articles are few and far between, but they are not unique. There are people who believe this nonsense, and people like that are a danger to themselves and others. Viruses care nothing about race. They infect and kill without discrimination. The fact that anyone might try to inject politics into this emergency is madness. In times like this, you can't afford dead weight. People in denial of reality are dead weight. In the end, we only have each other. Personally, I like society. I think it's awesome. I feel it is something we should strive to preserve. That is ultimately the reason why I've made this video, to help society. I find it far more fulfilling to build rather than to destroy. I hope you feel the same way. One more thing before I end this video. I've done a lot of suicide prevention. I still do, technically. It's just I only limit myself to my current job, not the phone lines. Something I run into with a lot of people are people who want life to be fair. I find this troublesome. Why? Well, it's easy to make life fair. I could do it right now. You want your life to be fair? I'll do it right now. Watch me. Imagine every terrible thing that ever happened to you. Every horrible nightmare, every injury, every pain, every suffering, everything in your life that sucks. You had it coming. You're a horrible person, and you deserved it. See, life's now fair. I don't want life to be fair. Yes, bad things happen to good people, and good things happen to bad people. But in the end, who decides what is and is not fair? If you won the lottery and became a billionaire, how could you ever do enough to be worthy of that much money? The answer is you couldn't. And anybody who's living with this delusion that they want the world to be fair is going to drive themselves insane. You see, most people, when you actually corner them and ask them specifically what they want when they say the world to be fair, they really just want the world to be unfair in their favor. And I want that as well. I want the world to be unfair in everyone's favor. You see, in an unfair world, yes, we can all lose. But we all can win as well. This virus is the ultimate proof, in my opinion, that life is unfair. Nobody who gets this disease will deserve it. It is not a punishment from the divine. It isn't Mother Nature's wrath. It is a catastrophe. Nothing more and nothing less. How it started or why is ultimately unimportant. The need to know that is just the all-too-human need to control your environment. In the end, we only control the inside of our own minds, and we only influence the world around us. Focus on what you can do. Let go of that which you cannot. I hope the best for everybody who catches this disease, regardless of nationality, religion, or creed. If you do catch it, I leave you with this thought. It is easy to focus on life being unfair, of being a bad thing, but it also can be a good thing. All too often, people think that they are bad people because bad things happen to them. And they do this because they want the world to be fair, and only by accepting the title that they're bad can they make sense of the world. The world doesn't make sense. It doesn't have a logical pattern to it. It doesn't need a logical pattern. You can create or you can destroy. That, I think, is ultimately the purpose. To create order out of chaos, because that is all life does. When you look at life and what its purpose is, and I can tell you definitively what life's purpose is, it's to create order. Even this virus is attempting to create order. It's trying to destroy other order to remake it in its own image. But ultimately, the virus is trying to make its own order. Now, why you should be doing this? Well, that's another story. Your purpose, I don't know, but I know the purpose of life. So stop fighting your nature. Create order. Try to make the world a better place. If we all do that, trust me, when you stop fighting your inner nature, you are a much happier person. You might not be able to do much, but do what little you can. And what little you can will show you that you have some control, and then you can build from there. In this world, no matter how bad you are or how bad things get, sometimes, just sometimes, by sheer random chance, it is possible to win in spite of yourself. For this reason, never surrender, never give up, for you never know when life will be unfair in your favor, even if you have not earned it. In other words, no matter how bad it gets, there is always hope. Any rate, that's about all I have to say on this matter. If you have any questions, please put it in the comments below, and I'll try to answer them in a follow-up video at some point. Otherwise, it's been real, and it's been fun. This hasn't been real fun. And remember, stay alert, plan ahead, help where you can. Eldritch, out.